You have been taught, implicitly and explicitly, that you live in a world that exists independently of you, and that your brain's job is to observe it as accurately as possible. You open your eyes, the world appears, and your mind records what is there. This idea feels obvious. It feels intuitive. And for most of human history, it went unquestioned. But modern neuroscience tells a very different story. Your brain does not open a window onto reality. It does not passively receive the world. It does not simply register what is out there. Instead, your brain actively constructs what you experience, moment by moment, using prediction as its primary strategy. This is not a metaphor. This is not philosophy. This is not spirituality. This is now one of the most robust frameworks in cognitive neuroscience. And once you truly understand it, it quietly reshapes everything: how stress works, why emotions feel overwhelming, why habits repeat, why identity feels fixed, and why change often feels so difficult, even when you want it desperately. The most important thing to understand is this: your brain is not designed to show you reality as it is. It is designed to keep you alive. And survival requires efficiency, not accuracy. To appreciate how radical this shift is, we need to start with a simple biological fact that is easy to overlook. Your brain has no direct access to the external world. None. Light never reaches your brain. Sound never reaches your brain. Objects, people, threats, opportunities, none of them enter your skull. What reaches your brain are electrical and chemical signals generated by sensory receptors. Your eyes convert light into neural impulses. Your ears convert vibration into neural impulses. Your skin converts pressure and temperature into neural impulses. Even your sense of your own body, hunger, tension, fatigue, pain, is mediated through internal sensory signals. The brain sits in darkness, sealed inside bone, flooded only with data streams. From this incomplete and noisy input, it must generate a coherent, continuous, and meaningful experience of a world, fast enough to act within it. If the brain waited passively for sensory data and then tried to assemble reality piece by piece, you would be too slow to survive. By the time you finished processing what you were seeing, the threat would already have reached you. Evolution solved this problem in a far more elegant way. The brain predicts first and corrects later. This idea sits at the heart of what is now called predictive processing, a framework that has unified perception, action, emotion, learning, and even consciousness under a single explanatory model. Philosophers of mind like Andy Clark and neuroscientists like Carl Friston have argued that the brain is best understood not as a reactive organ, but as a prediction engine. At every moment, your brain is generating hypotheses about what is likely to happen next. It predicts what you are about to see before the light even reaches your eyes. It predicts what you are about to hear before the sound waves arrive. It predicts how your body should feel, how others will behave, and what your internal state means. Incoming sensory information does not create perception. It merely updates predictions when they are sufficiently wrong. If the incoming data matches what the brain expects, perception feels effortless and immediate. If the data deviates too much, the brain experiences something called prediction error, a signal that its internal model needs adjustment. But here is the crucial point. The brain does not update freely or continuously. It updates conservatively. It changes its model only when the cost of ignoring the error becomes greater than the cost of changing the prediction. This is why you can stare directly at something and not see it. Why illusions work. Why expectations shape experience. Why anxiety persists even when nothing is wrong. Your brain is not trying to show you truth. It is trying to maintain a stable, energy-efficient model of the world. This emphasis on efficiency brings us to one of the most influential ideas in contemporary neuroscience, the free energy principle, proposed by Carl Friston. Despite its intimidating name, the principle captures something deeply intuitive about living systems. Biological organisms must resist disorder. They must keep their internal states within viable ranges. To do this, they must reduce uncertainty about the world they inhabit. In this context, free energy does not mean energy in the everyday sense. It refers to a mathematical measure of surprise, the gap between what the system expects and what actually occurs. Living systems survive by minimizing surprise. Too much unpredictability is metabolically expensive. It forces constant recalculation, constant vigilance, constant stress. So the brain learns models of the world that reduce uncertainty. It predicts patterns, repeats behaviors, and stabilizes expectations. This is why familiarity feels safe, even when it hurts. A familiar disappointment is less threatening than an unknown possibility. A predictable form of stress is easier to manage than an ambiguous future. An identity that causes suffering can still feel safer than the uncertainty of change. The brain is not asking, "Is this good for me?" It is asking, "Is this predictable?" Once we understand this, emotions take on a very different meaning. We are often taught that emotions are reactions to events. Something happens, and then we feel something about it. But this story does not hold up under neuroscientific scrutiny. Research in effective neuroscience, particularly the work of Lisa Feldman Barrett, suggests that emotions are not hardwired responses triggered by the environment. Instead, they are predictions constructed by the brain to regulate the body. Your brain is constantly forecasting what your body will need next. Should it mobilize energy? Should it conserve resources? Should it prepare to fight, flee, connect, or withdraw? Emotions are the brain's way of preparing the body in advance. Fear is a prediction that danger is likely. Anxiety is a prediction of uncertainty and loss of control. Sadness is a prediction of withdrawal following loss. Calm is a prediction of safety and stability. This means that emotions are not passive experiences that happen to you. They are active inferences your brain makes about what is required to survive. Crucially, this also means that emotions do not wait for conscious thought. They arise before awareness, shaping perception, attention, and interpretation. You do not first perceive reality and then feel anxious about it. You feel anxious because your brain predicts threat, and then reality is filtered through that prediction. This reversal explains why logic rarely dissolves anxiety, why reassurance feels hollow, and why telling yourself to calm down often makes things worse. The prediction remains intact. Stress, in this framework, becomes much clearer. Stress is not simply the presence of difficulty or demand. Stress is what happens when the brain's predictions repeatedly fail, when the world becomes difficult to model, when outcomes feel uncertain, when signals are contradictory, when control seems lost, prediction error accumulates. The nervous system responds by increasing vigilance, narrowing attention, and mobilizing resources. This is adaptive in the short term. It keeps you alert in dangerous situations. But when uncertainty becomes chronic, stress becomes chronic. Neuroscientists like Robert Sapolsky have shown how prolonged activation of stress systems damages the body and brain over time. Cortisol remains elevated. Immune function is altered. Memory and emotional regulation suffer. Importantly, stress does not require actual danger. It requires unpredictability. You can be physically safe and deeply stressed. You can be materially secure and emotionally overwhelmed. You can be doing everything right and still feel on edge. Because stress is not about what is happening. It is about what your brain cannot reliably predict. This predictive nature of the brain also explains why reality feels so solid and stable, even though it is, in many ways, constructed. The brain repeats what works. Predictions that successfully reduce uncertainty are reused. Over time, they become entrenched. Repetition strengthens neural pathways. Expectations solidify. What began as a hypothesis becomes a habit. What began as a habit becomes identity. You don't just predict the world. You predict yourself. You predict how you will feel in certain situations. You predict how others will treat you. You predict what outcomes are possible for you. And then, unconsciously, your perception is shaped to confirm those predictions. This is not merely a cognitive bias. It is a metabolic strategy. Updating deeply held predictions is expensive. It requires energy, uncertainty, and risk. So the brain resists change unless there is a compelling reason. This is why identity feels fixed, why personal narratives repeat, why people say, "This is just how I am." It is not a failure of will. It is neural efficiency. At this point, it becomes tempting to draw parallels with quantum physics. And this is where care is required. Quantum mechanics does not say that the mind magically creates reality, but it does show us that, at fundamental levels, the universe is not deterministic in the classical sense. Systems are described in terms of probabilities. Outcomes are constrained by measurement, interaction, and context. Physicists have long known that observation is not passive. Measuring a system changes the system, not because consciousness is mystical, but because interaction imposes constraints. In a very different domain, the brain operates in an analogous way. Perception is not a mirror. It is a selection. Out of many possible interpretations, the brain selects the one that best fits its prior predictions while minimizing error. Attention plays a central role here. Attention is not just noticing something. It is the allocation of metabolic and neural resources. What you attend to becomes more precise, more detailed, more emotionally salient. Neural firing increases. Predictions sharpen. This is why rumination strengthens anxiety, why focus amplifies emotion, why distraction can regulate distress. You are not manifesting reality by thinking about it. You are stabilizing certain neural predictions by repeatedly feeding them attention and emotion. Understanding this reframes self-help in a profound way. Most self-help approaches focus on conscious thought, changing beliefs, repeating affirmations, forcing motivation. But willpower operates at the top of the hierarchy. Prediction operates much lower. When you try to force change through effort alone, you often increase prediction error. The nervous system interprets this as threat. Resistance increases. Relapse becomes likely. This is why habits break and reform. Why diets fail. Why resolutions collapse. Change that lasts is not imposed. It is absorbed. Predictions update when new information arrives consistently, safely, and without overwhelming threat. This is why environments matter more than motivation. Why relationships heal more than advice. Why gradual change works better than dramatic effort. The brain recalibrates when the world reliably signals a new pattern. From this perspective, anxiety is not an enemy to fight. It is a prediction to understand. You do not eliminate anxiety by suppressing it. You reduce it by increasing predictability, safety, and coherence in your environment and body. This includes physical routines, emotional regulation, social connection, and attentional habits. Confidence is not generated by affirming strength. It emerges when predictions of competence are repeatedly confirmed. Calm is not forced. It arises when the nervous system no longer expects threat. Identity does not change through declaration. It shifts when the brain updates its model of who you are based on lived evidence. The most important insight is also the most gentle one. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not failing at change. Your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do: reduce uncertainty, conserve energy, and keep you alive. Reality feels real not because it is fixed, but because your brain predicts it efficiently. And what is predicted can be updated, not instantly, not magically, but biologically, through repetition, through safety, through attention, through understanding the system rather than fighting it. Once you see this, you stop trying to control reality and start learning how experience is constructed, and that changes everything. As we move deeper into the predictive nature of the brain, one question becomes unavoidable. If perception is prediction and identity is a stabilized model, then what role does memory actually play? Most people assume memory is storage. Experiences happen, they are recorded, and later retrieved. But neuroscience has shown this picture to be fundamentally inaccurate. Memory is not an archive. It is a reconstruction. Each time you remember something, you are not accessing a fixed record. You are rebuilding an experience in the present, using fragments of sensory detail, emotional tone, and current expectation. This reconstruction is influenced not only by what originally occurred, but by who you are now, what you expect now, and what your nervous system is prepared to tolerate now. Researchers such as Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated decades ago that memory is highly malleable. Entire details can be added, altered, or removed without conscious awareness. But what is often less discussed is why the brain reconstructs memory this way. From a predictive processing perspective, memory is not designed to preserve the past. It is designed to support future prediction. The brain does not ask, "What exactly happened?" It asks, "What do I need to expect next time?" Memory therefore functions as a prediction training system. It extracts patterns, emotional significance, and survival-relevant information, and then uses those patterns to anticipate the future. Accuracy is secondary. Usefulness is primary. This explains why emotionally charged memories are remembered more vividly, even when details are distorted. Emotion marks information as predictive. It tells the brain, "This mattered, use it again." Trauma represents an extreme version of this process. In traumatic experiences, the nervous system is overwhelmed by uncertainty, threat, or lack of control. Prediction fails catastrophically. The brain cannot model what is happening in a way that restores safety. As a result, it encodes the experience not as a narrative, but as a state. Neuroscientists such as Joseph Ledoux have shown that traumatic memory is often stored outside conscious narrative systems. It is encoded in sensory fragments, bodily sensations, and emotional responses rather than coherent stories. This is not a flaw. It is an emergency adaptation. The brain learns one central lesson: do not let this happen again. From that point on, prediction becomes biased toward threat detection. Attention narrows. The nervous system scans for danger, not because danger is present, but because uncertainty once proved intolerable. Importantly, trauma is not defined solely by events. It is defined by states of overwhelm. Two people can experience the same situation and encode it differently, depending on whether their nervous system had the capacity to regulate at the time. This distinction matters deeply because it means trauma is not a permanent imprint of the past. It is a persistent prediction of threat maintained in the present. Here is where memory, trauma, and identity converge. When the brain predicts danger, it also predicts a particular version of the self: vigilant, guarded, reactive, or withdrawn. Identity becomes organized around protection. This identity then filters perception, confirming the prediction. This creates a closed loop. Prediction shapes perception. Perception reinforces memory. Memory stabilizes identity. Identity biases future prediction. Breaking this loop does not require erasing memory. It requires changing the conditions under which memory is accessed and reconsolidated. Modern neuroscience has shown that memory is not only reconstructive, it is also editable during recall. Each time a memory is reactivated, it briefly becomes label. During this window, new emotional information can be integrated. This process is known as memory reconsolidation. When a memory is recalled in a regulated state, one in which safety is present, the brain updates its predictive model. The emotional charge associated with the memory can soften, not because the past has changed, but because the future no longer needs to be predicted in the same way. This is why insight alone rarely heals trauma. Understanding what happened does not automatically change prediction. The nervous system must experience safety during recall for learning to occur. This brings us back to the central theme running through this entire discussion. State precedes change. The brain does not update its deepest predictions through force, repetition, or persuasion. It updates them when new information arrives without threat. This is true for habits, identity, emotional regulation, and memory alike. From this perspective, many self-help approaches unintentionally work against the nervous system. When change is framed as urgent, effortful, or corrective, the body interprets it as pressure. Pressure increases uncertainty. Uncertainty reinforces defensive prediction. This insight forms the foundation of the framework explored in Quantum Reset. Rather than treating change as something to be achieved through effort, Quantum Reset approaches transformation as a shift in state, a reorganization of the conditions from which perception, memory, and identity emerge. The emphasis is not on doing more, but on reducing the internal pressure that prevents reorganization. In this sense, the reset is not an action. It is a release of interference. When the nervous system settles, prediction loosens. When prediction loosens, memory reconsolidates. When memory reconsolidates, identity becomes flexible. When identity becomes flexible, new futures become perceptible. This is not speculative. It is consistent with what neuroscience shows about learning, adaptation, and regulation. At this point, it is tempting to describe this process as rewriting the past, but that framing is misleading. Nothing is being overwritten. The brain is simply updating its expectations. The past does not disappear. Its grip on the future weakens. This distinction is crucial, especially when discussing trauma and emotional pain. Healing does not require forgetting. It requires that the nervous system no longer treats the memory as a signal of imminent danger. This is why safety, not insight, not effort, is the most powerful catalyst for change. Researchers such as Stephen Porges have emphasized that regulation allows access to cognitive flexibility. When the nervous system perceives safety, attention broadens, memory integrates, and identity softens. When it does not, prediction becomes rigid. From this angle, even practices like mindfulness or meditation are not effective because they train attention alone. They work because they reduce prediction error by anchoring attention in present moment sensory input, signaling safety to the nervous system. This is also why many people report spontaneous shifts, moments when change seems to occur without effort. These moments often coincide with states of deep presence, connection, or relief. Prediction temporarily relaxes. The system updates. If we now return carefully to the language of physics, we can see why metaphors drawn from quantum theory continue to resonate when used responsibly. Physicists such as Carlo Rovelli and David Bohm have emphasized that reality is not composed of fixed objects with intrinsic properties, but of relationships, interactions, and probabilities. What becomes observable depends on context. While the brain does not operate quantum mechanically in any literal sense, it does share this relational logic. Experience is not fixed. It emerges from interaction between prediction and input, expectation and sensation, memory and present conditions. Attention acts as a constraint. Emotion weights probabilities. Identity stabilizes interpretation. From this standpoint, what people often call manifestation is better understood as perceptual selection. The nervous system does not create reality. It determines which aspects of reality are noticed, acted upon, and reinforced. This reframing removes magical thinking while preserving agency. You are not responsible for controlling outcomes. You are responsible for the state from which you engage with them. As this becomes clear, the entire question of self-improvement changes. You stop asking, "How do I become different?" and start asking, "What state am I reinforcing?" You stop fighting anxiety. You address uncertainty. You stop chasing certainty in the future. You reduce pressure in the present. You stop waiting to feel ready. You create conditions that allow readiness to emerge. This is the quiet logic underlying both neuroscience and quantum reset. Change becomes possible when effort is no longer organized around lack. One final point deserves attention. Because memory is reconstructive and prediction-based, constant self-monitoring can interfere with integration. When people repeatedly check whether they have changed enough, they reactivate old predictive models. Attention returns to the previous identity. The nervous system re-enters vigilance. This is why sustainable change often feels anticlimactic. It does not announce itself. It becomes visible only in retrospect. When reactions soften, choices feel simpler, and familiar triggers lose their intensity. The brain does not need to be told it has changed. It needs to experience coherence repeatedly. This is why quantum reset emphasizes integration rather than transformation. The goal is not to become someone new, but to allow the system to operate without unnecessary interference. Change is not something you perform. It is something that stabilizes when pressure is removed. An anxious mind isn't broken, it's predicting uncertainty. If these ideas resonate, and you want to explore them in a slower, more reflective way, particularly the role of state, pressure, and identity in change, Quantum Reset expands on this framework in written form, with space for integration rather than instruction. It is not a manual, and it does not promise outcomes. It offers a way of understanding why effort so often fails, and why change sometimes happens quietly when resistance ends. Quantum Reset. The work, however, is not in the reading. It is in recognizing, moment by moment, how prediction shapes experience, and how gently allowing the system to settle can open possibilities that effort never could. If you want to continue exploring these ideas, prediction, memory, emotion, and how internal states quietly shape experience, this channel is built for that depth. Subscribing helps keep these long-form conversations going, and it also signals to the algorithm that there is space for thoughtful, research-based work like this. You'll find links below to the books and research that inform this episode. They're not required reading, but they're there if you want to go deeper.